and remained inside the Palestinian territory. Israel said it was the start of the second stage of the war. Israel also cut phone and internet communications in Gaza on Friday. Service was partially restored after one day following pressure from the U.S. We've already reported that over 1,400 people have been killed in Israel since it was attacked by Hamas on October 7th. And now the Palestinians say over 8,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected calls for a ceasefire in a news conference today and said that Israel's main goal is to take down Hamas. He called the release of a hostage today a turning point in the war, saying that Israel did not start this war. Israel did not want this war, but he said Israel will win this war. In his first major move, House Speaker Mike Johnson is using the bipartisan goal of providing aid to Israel to, what some say, pick a fight with President Joe Biden over his signature achievement. A new House bill signed off by the Speaker, released today, includes $14.3 billion in emergency funding for Israel, but it also rescinds the exact same amount of IRS funding from the Inflation Reduction Act. We know there's a major climate, health care, and tax law that Biden signed into law last year. Robert Card, the 40-year-old white man who was found Friday near the locations of the rampage in Lewiston, Maine, we now know that he died of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Card killed 18 people at a bowling alley and a restaurant on Wednesday. Well, a federal judge has reimposed a gag order on Donald Trump. The former president now can no longer attack witnesses or attorneys ahead of his trial on charges of conspiring to overturn the 2020 election. Trump can now ask a higher court for an emergency stay pending appeal. But in the meantime, he is bound by the judge's limitations. And in related news, a Denver judge was hearing arguments today on whether the 14th Amendment can be used to stop Donald Trump from running for president in the state of Colorado. The UAW reached a tentative settlement agreement today with the last holdout and making a deal now with Jeep, who is the maker of Stellantis. The deal includes a 25% raise over the next 4.5 years. It's similar to a deal reached with Ford last week. Now, these are some of the union's biggest gains. The union escalated its strike against GM, the last of the big three autos. And Ron DeSantis began the year widely viewed as the Republican with the best chance to build a winning coalition against the former president. Well, he billed himself as the Trump alternative who could entice Trump critics, yet was also in many ways a continuation of Trump's America First platform. But DeSantis' support has dramatically shrunk since then, eroding on both ends of the party spectrum. And as of today, former President Donald Trump maintains a commanding lead among Republicans running for president in 2024. And in the first in the nation Iowa caucuses, Nikki Haley has pulled into a second position behind Donald Trump, besting Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. 43% of likely caucus goers picked Trump as their first choice candidate, despite his cascading legal challenges. And the Biden administration is unveiling new actions today to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses after an alarming uptick in incidents since the Israel-Hamas war started earlier this month. The Departments of Justice and Homeland Security are partnering with campus law enforcement to track hate-related rhetoric online and provide federal resources to schools. And not so surprisingly, former Vice President Mike Pence dropped out of the 2024 Republican presidential race. He did this on Saturday, saying that the past 6 months have shown him that his bid is not likely to succeed. He went on to say, "It's become clear to me, this is not my time." You're watching and listening to Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I am so lucky to be joined by two of KBLA's most brilliant contributors, Allen Orr. He is the founder of Orr Immigration Law Firm, and Dr. Michael Fauntroy. He is a professor at George Mason University. And in hour two, we're going to dig behind some headlines and go deep on a story that we've been talking about for a while, and that's the story of banning books. Moms for Liberty have been very vocal, very out front, very organized in leading the charge in many southern states to get books banned in school. Well, in the second hour today, we're going to meet a civil rights attorney, former president of the NAACP Minneapolis chapter, and former leader for Black Lives Matter in Minnesota, Nikema Levy-Armstrong. Nikema is on a mission to combat the work of Moms for Liberty. She started her own organization called Moms for Liberation, and she is hoping to stem the tide of the banning of books, particularly those books that address Black history and Black culture. I sit down with Nikema in hour two and find out what motivated her to start Moms for Liberation, what she hopes to accomplish, and what we all should be incredibly, incredibly nervous about as it relates to the banning of books. So make sure you stick around for hour two. But before I bring on my guest, here's what I'm thinking in real time. I was in New York a week ago, and I was at a department store, and I ran into Flavor Flav. You all remember him? He is the rapper that wears the big clock around his neck. Well, Flavor Flav is checking off his bucket list. This rapper sang the national anthem Sunday night ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks game against the Atlanta Hawks. Now, his singing of the national anthem had the internet abuzz. Some fans were praising him, while others were scratching their heads trying to figure out who signed up Flavor Flav, who entered into this contract, who contacted him, who hired him to sing the national anthem. Because I don't know if you saw it last night, but you can Google it, you can find it on YouTube. He gave it a flavorful rendition, or he put some of his Flavor Flav flavor on the way that he sang the national anthem. He was there wearing his signature clock pendant and a number 59 jersey referencing the actual year that he was born. Now, we're told that the Bucks invited Flavor Flav, whose real name is William Jonathan Drayton Jr. The Bucks actually were the ones who contracted with Mr. Drayton to perform the national anthem. You have to go on X, formerly Twitter, and look at some of the comments from folks who were watching it in real time. Some folks said things like, Milwaukee is out of control for this, adding a string of laughing emojis. Others, were giving him some love. Some people weren't as kind as others. Someone wrote on X, Flavor Flav gave our anthem all the reverence it deserves and then some. And anyone who says otherwise is a certified hater. Now, I don't know what your feelings are about Flavor Flav, him as a rapper, him as a, big media personality, but I'm impressed. I say, kudos to Flavor Flav. This was on his bucket list, something he has wanted to do. Now, he's only 64 years old, so, given what we know about Black folks and longevity, not likely, unless he has some kind of serious illness that we don't know about, that he's going to die anytime soon, but never too early to start doing those things that are on your bucket list. And, he did something that was important to him. The mixed reaction, people are entitled to their, First Amendment rights to say whatever they feel. They were doing it mostly online. So I'm sure either he chose to look at all the online comments or maybe not. He felt good about his performance. He wanted to do it. according to his team, he had a lot of fun doing it. So at the end, that's all that really matters. So again, I say kudos to you, Flavor Flav. And all of us can take a page out of his playbook, figure out what's important to us, what we want to do on our bucket list. And if we have the opportunity to do something as big as this, which is to sing the national anthem at a professional, sports game, then, if you get it, I say take it. Take that opportunity. Do that which makes you happy, which, causes you joy. And for those folks that didn't like it, you know what? That's what a remote control is for. You could have turned the channel. You did not have to watch him sing the national anthem. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, go online, Google it, find Flavor Flav singing the national anthem. When we come forward, more of today's trending and breaking news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities and sports figures, elected leaders and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and in this hour, Allen Orr and Dr. Michael Fauntroy join me as we make sense of today's breaking news, and it has been a big day. Professor Fauntroy, Joe Biden seems to be tempering his unfettered, unequivocal support for Israel. There's a New York Times article that says he is saying, we support you, but they're words of caution. And this is coming as the Americans and people all over the world have watched this humanitarian crisis that has evolved in Gaza. And I think listening to some of those Israeli leaders over the weekend and on Friday using words like payback, have forced Joe Biden to take what may be a different position. How long do you think it will be before Biden's position isn't just support with words of caution, but maybe conditions are placed on Israel as it relates to all of the aid and support that Biden is trying to provide?
We saw last week a turn in some of this, and you may recall some of the reporting noted that U.S. military officials and diplomatic officials were urging the Israelis to learn some of the lessons that the U.S. learned in Iraq. Right, and that to me was an early signal that perhaps they weren't exactly happy with what was being said and done coming out of the Israeli government. I would add to you also, I would also ask you to remember, and this is where electoral politics can sometimes get in the way. You may recall that in 2016 and in 2020, Benjamin Netanyahu had sort of cozied up to Donald Trump in those elections. He and Trump had a long relationship, and they were pretty close. And Obama and Netanyahu did not exactly have a close relationship. So I think those are among some of the reasons why you see some of this. And to your point, and I think it's absolutely right, some of the Israeli leaders are on the verge of sounding like cowboys here with some of the rhetoric that they're using. And it's provocative unnecessarily in some cases. And it also puts domestic pressure on an Israeli ally, namely the United States. As you know, many of the leaders, particularly on the Republican side, don't want to get involved anywhere when it pertains to U.S. servicemen and women. But if this continues, it's going to be hard to not get involved. And so I think what Biden is doing is just trying to wave a flag in front of them, saying, "Hey, look, we're with you, but it's not unconditional. If you go too far out of line, we're going to have to get it. We're going to have to pressure you to take a different path."
So, Allen, what is too far, right? That's the big question here, because Palestinians say already 8,000 people have been killed. 2,700 of those they report are children. And not only was there some provocative rhetoric being used Friday and over the weekend, they also, the reports that I saw, and I actually saw some of these speakers on television from Israel, wrapping themselves up in Joe Biden. Like, the U.S. is 100% with us. U.S. is 100% with us, knowing, presumably, that they needed to say that over and over and over again as they were getting pushback from the UN Secretary General, the Secretary General of the UN, and others around the world that are just becoming increasingly incensed by this killing. Even people in Israel saying, "Not in our name." So we've seen Jewish American groups protesting in New York and other places, and Jewish people inside of Israel saying, "Not in our name." So the question is, how much is too much?
So I think too much has already happened in a world of expanding problems and war not being solution, because we've seen this happen over and over again through historical analysis of how someone strikes and someone strikes back, and you sort of invent that story. But I think what's important to me to share with the American people is that there are Palestinians that are American that are also in Palestine, and therefore they're being bombed. And if we're going to talk about the protection of Israelis who are American, we also have to talk about the protection of Palestinians that are American. And the issue here is the conflict is the division, and the justification of collective punishment baffles me in all ways, because we would never say that in any other circumstance, that it's collective damage for these children to die, even if they were involved, right? If they were born into that situation, they had nothing to do with it. So I'm reminded in history that the narrator describes what's happening to me and gives the justification for the story, because in the rich place of Haiti, I'm sure the French people were saying, they are crazy, they're Mongols, we should kill them all, right? So we should have a wider perspective of that and know that if it really was about the challenge and the protection, then it really is just like with the U.S. after 9/11. What were the security failures that allowed this to happen? And what caused that animosity to sort of build? Killing more of them than killed of you is only going to regenerate the whole story and maybe aggravate the whole region. That's what you see what's happening right now, is this aggregate foreign policy of trying to say, let's not try to divide us anymore. But we have found something, and I think this is a political secret that we need to just talk about. There is a division tactic going on right now across U.S. politics, American politics, and the world to divide people into thinking that's your enemy when they've always been your friend. And the best way to solve that is through this brutal conflict.
Yeah, we had a really, I thought, interesting guest on the show last week. She is a historian of Israeli-Palestinian crisis. She's written several books. She also studies the crisis from a religious standpoint. And I think she made, Professor Fauntroy, a really good point. And she said we have to think about Israel as a state. And, separating the people, the Jewish people, we should disagree when states act in a way that are barbaric or, they're too aggressive, as many people think Israel is being. And we can condemn the state of Israel, the government actions of Israel, while still mourning the losses of those 1,400 innocent people who were killed as a result of the terrorist attack. Supporting the Jewish people to live without fear and without, retribution, and do that while also having those same feelings towards the people in Palestine who are not, complicit in this, who are innocent victims. And there seems to have been now this conversation that's taking place that if you somehow try to explain the history that Allen just talked about, you are excusing the terrorists. And I saw another scholar recently say, no, an explanation is not an excuse. She wrote a really, I thought, learned, brilliant piece in The Atlantic, that we can explain that history because many people don't know it. And we're not excusing it by simply explaining it. Now, you're on a college campus. What's happening there? Because we know these college campuses have just been so rife with tension, as some people have tried to do this, explain that history. They've been called anti-Semitic, and now we see an uptick in attacks against Jewish students on certain campuses as well. I think you're mute, Professor.
Sorry about that. Let me deal with the college campus part of this. I teach at a 40,000 student public institution right outside of Washington, D.C. My campus looks like America 30 years from now. It looks like the United Nations. I have students of every possible religious background, nationality, racial and ethnic group is represented. It really is what the future of the United States will be. And I will tell you, Reva, it's really walking on eggshells on that campus. By the way, in a campus in which the governor of Virginia is sort of like the poor man's Ron DeSantis, or less sort of overt Ron DeSantis, right? So there's a whole lot of stuff bubbling under the surface that has not yet fully come out. I teach a course this semester on the presidency, and before each session, we spend a little time talking about what's going on in the news. And I will just say to you, they have feelings, my students, but they aren't ready to share it. And I think part of that is because our public discourse around this issue and so many others is really corroded in ways that are unfortunate. You can't really dig deeply into stuff. You can't always talk about this history, this nuanced, complicated history that's wrapped up in religion and race and language and all of these other sorts of variables. So I will just say we have a real discourse problem here. We can't have these conversations in ways that I think are useful. And it's not just the Middle East. I mean, we have the same problems here domestically with race conversations.
Well, let me ask you this. Your president is Greg Washington, right? African-American.
Yep, the former dean of the School of Engineering at UC Irvine.
Yep, I know him well, good friend.
Yeah.
And your governor is a Republican governor, and because you're a public institution, the governor appoints, right, the trustees for these public institutions, right?
Correct.
So, has your governor, what's been his position? Has he taken a position? Has he, where is he?
He's taken Glenn Youngkin is his name. He really wants to be president of the United States. He doesn't really want to be governor. He wants to be president. So he's taken a fairly standard Republican move on this. But what he's also done is taken a very conservative approach on public education, how you teach history and civics and all that kind of stuff. the kinds of things I mentioned Ron DeSantis earlier. I really do think if Ron DeSantis weren't such a lightning rod around the country right now for some of this stuff, people would be talking about what's going on in Virginia.
It's that bad. Wow. Okay. The humanitarian part of this, Alan, is I think what has so many people.
But before you leave, Youngkin, just know that he's trying to take Virginia. He's trying to take Virginia over. I mean, he's working on abortion right now. So the reason why he might not be big on the Israeli thing is because he's really focused on taking over the Virginia House in the election that's coming up this week, so that he can ensure that Virginia is the next state that will outlaw abortion. And he said it.
What's the election, real quickly?
The state legislative races are coming up. The entire legislature is up, and it's generally a bellwether for where the state is going to be in the next presidential election.
And is it thought that the Republicans, or is it a Republican majority now? And is it thought that they'll maintain their majority? The thin
majorities, but which are certainly reversible, if you will. But there are Republicans in the state that are scared to death because of abortion. And I'm not going to be surprised if the Republican majorities are reversed.
Okay, we're going to be watching Virginia, and also got to watch.
It's going to be huge.
Yeah,
Virginia's going to be huge.
Comes up, I think, November 7th. So we're going to be watching to see what happens around that abortion initiative and how abortion, does it continue to be that galvanizing force that turns out those younger voters, those more progressive Democratic voters. So we're going to obviously watch both of those races very closely. When we come forward, we're going to talk about some more political issues and presidential politics. A lot happened over the weekend. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We are back, and in this hour, we are tracking today's breaking and trending news with immigration attorney Allen Orr and Dr. Michael Fauntroy. And in hour two, we are talking to a mom on a mission to counter some of the book bans that we've seen implemented by state legislatures and school districts across the South in particular. You don't want to miss this hour, the second hour, because his mom's going to tell us how these book bans are having a ripple effect across so many other areas, not just what our kids are reading. So make sure you stick around for hour two. But in this hour, Alan, lots happened this weekend in political presidential news, particularly as it relates to the Republican Party. We know that the Vice President Mike Pence dropped out, and Nikki Haley seems to be having a moment. She now is polling second in Iowa behind Donald Trump. It's a really distant second, but she still is polling ahead of Ron DeSantis. And all the news over the weekend just keeps pointing to Ron DeSantis's candidacy and campaign pretty much tanking. What do you make of some of this, recent, news as it relates to the GOP presidential campaigns?
I think the news is true, and the party has already selected their candidate. It's already pretty much decided for them that if Trump is allowed to run, he will be the party pick. No misunderstanding that Pence dropped out. He was wasting time and money and energy. And I think the reason that Nikki Haley, because of her last performance, is doing really well and she is somewhat knowledgeable about foreign policy, but I think people just don't know her policies well enough yet to actually hear her speak and her double talk with regards to the things that she benefited from, such as immigration being number one, to sort of see that she isn't really in the place to sort of lead the party either.
Well, okay, nobody's excited about Mike Pence, you're right, just wasting time, wasting money. He didn't want to be embarrassed, I guess, by not even making the next debate that's coming up in November. So he bowed out, gracefully said it wasn't his time, as if it would ever be his time. His time was over when he latched on to Donald Trump and sold the country down the river by, co-signing on so many of the lies and horrible policies of Donald Trump. But Professor Fauntroy, somebody's going to be second in this GOP race. Now, they may be a distant second. Do you think it's going to come down to the next debate and the performance of those candidates on the debate stage? Or do you think Nikki Haley's pretty much going to stay in second position, which might mean for her that she gets picked to be the VP?
So I think the answer to that will depend in part on the outcome of the upcoming debate. You'll notice that we're talking about Nikki Haley this week, when 2 weeks ago we were talking about Vivek Ramaswamy. I mean, the anti-Trump forces are scrambling, trying to find somebody. They thought it was going to be DeSantis, but he's uniquely unlikable. And so I don't think it's going to be him. So there's got to be somebody. And so I think the next debate will tell a big part of the story. Someone could emerge. I'm not entirely certain that that's going to happen. But if it is somebody, I would keep a slight eye on Chris Christie, because he seems to be the next person to have a moment that we haven't yet heard from. In terms of Nikki Haley being put on the ticket, I think theoretically that's true. But she's been pretty harsh on Trump recently. And as thin-skinned as Trump is, it might be difficult for him to set that aside. And he may choose to pick someone else that he could feel a little more loyalty from. He's not going to get any from her.
Well, we know Carrie Lake desperately wants the job. They said she was camping out in Mar-a-Lago and, doing everything in her power to be that pick. But, that is interesting that you bring up the attacks. Ron DeSantis, too, Allen, has decided to try to go negative on Donald Trump. But it seems like all of these candidates have waited too long. Nobody's listening to them. They can't get any airtime now with the Israeli-Palestinian war. I mean, the last two news cycles have been about the war and the, just complete chaos in the House with respect to picking the GOP speaker. So, what do any of these people do to try to get a little traction?
Well, I think it's also good for them not to be in the news right now because it shows their deficiencies. Nikki Haley also came out really clear about who ran up the budget, right? Who caused all the deficit to be what the deficit is. So from the very jump. And so they've moved to an anti-swing. That's why none of those people, for me, including Chris Christie, will ever be on the ticket with him if he's sort of there. He's sort of a small person and he makes small choices. I believe that if you were asking me, he would look to the lieutenant governor of Virginia, Black woman, gun-toting, well-liked in conservative pools, Black woman, because that's the politics that they play, Black woman against Black woman, would be one of his picks when I sort of think about it now that your South Carolina or wherever she's from, Mace, is already blown up in smoke with her background. But I think it's interesting to me that it really doesn't matter what they do, because as long as there's another option, they're unimportant. So spot 2 on the ticket, that was supposed to be Pence's job, is to keep everything from going off the rail. And he did his job, I would say, with regards to January 6th, perhaps. His moment of noble understanding and Christian led him to do the right thing. But outside of that, Trump doesn't need someone who's strong-willed on his ticket. That's not his job.
It's interesting that you mentioned the African-American lieutenant governor of Virginia as a possible pick. Byron Donalds, that's the Florida Black congressman who is a big Trump supporter, thought he was going to be Speaker of the House. He was on Fox, and someone sent me a tweet, and he trying to find it. He was on Fox, and he said, more and more Black people. Oh, here it is. Byron Donalds tells Maria
Bartiromo.
More and more Black Americans are saying we gotta have Trump back.
it's like him and Sexy Red and one or two other people. I don't know exactly who they are. Allen mentioned the Virginia Lieutenant Governor. Her name is Winsome Sears. She's an immigrant, and I happened to interview her for a book I wrote on Republicans and Black voters 15 years ago. She's the kind of person that would allow herself to be used in that way. And unfortunately, that's sort of the tokenism that the Republicans are looking for right now, which helps to explain why anybody knows Byron Donald's name. He's only in his second term in Congress and has not distinguished himself in any meaningful way. And yet people are talking about him as a potential speaker. He was put in nomination for the job back in January and last week, and he is not a serious person at all, or not a serious politician at all.
Professor, the way you become a player in the Republican Party is you align yourself with Donald Trump.
Of course.
You say provocative things. You get repeat hits on Fox, like Byron is doing. And if you're Black and you're saying those things, the conservative media eats that up because they're looking for Black folks, i.e. Herschel Walker, right, to validate this narrative.
Where is Herschel Walker?
Yes.
Hey, look, if you can go on TV and do all that and then say bad stuff about Black people, the sky's the limit for you on places like Fox.
Well, it's interesting. Yes, and then until it's not, right? So look at Tim Scott. He's gone down in flames. So he's been that guy that has, put himself out there as the Black guy that will deny systemic racism and say that this country isn't racist and, tell us that cotton to
didn't have the right picture.
Story.
His family picture. That family picture ain't right. That's his issue. If he'd had a family picture, if he'd had a Jeannie or a Susan or somebody, he would have been fine.
Karen.
Well, Byron has a good picture. Have you seen Byron's picture?
Of course I have. Of course.
Okay, well.
But Representative
I'm telling Professor Fauntroy, there you go. So, Mike, Byron is in the mix because take a look at that family picture. Speaking of family pictures, I know you guys
Dan Cameron in Kentucky, by the way. Dan Cameron in Kentucky.
Absolutely.
Oh, Dan Cameron, yes.
Look at his family picture. Look at his wedding picture. He's the only person in there that looks like him.
He's a cutie. So, he's kind of got that, model look. He's better looking guy than Byron. You guys aren't checking for all this, but I'm just like,
why are we doing this?
Okay, we're getting back to help distinguish. I was trying to make the point about family pictures. Mike Johnson, our new speaker, got some family picture drama all weekend. The internet was going crazy trying to find his Black son that he said he adopted, and that story just went haywire. But Mike Johnson is our speaker, and now Mike Johnson wants to send a bill to the Senate providing for aid for Israel, but to appease his conservative MAGA base is saying, we'll give you $14 billion, but we're going to cut $14 billion out of the IRS's budget. When we come forward, we're going to talk about Mike Johnson and the perils that he is in and the obstacles and barriers that will probably bring him down. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a red spot,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nikki Haley, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
All right, our new Speaker of the House says he's in favor of aid to Israel, but he wants an equal reduction of the amount from the IRS's budget. Professor Fauntroy, this speaker knows he's in a lot of trouble. He knows he cannot turn his back on his MAGA base that got him elected, and he knows his MAGA base is not going to support aid to anyone unless there is huge cuts in the government's budget. What does this opening kind of salvo tell you about where the fight over the bigger budget is likely to go under this very inexperienced speaker, Mike Johnson?
Yeah, I think that it's evidence of his weakness as from a negotiating standpoint. He's coming at this without a whole lot to sort of fight with, because Mitch McConnell understands that $14 billion that he's trying to cut out of the IRS is a non-starter. That can't get through the Democratic Senate, and they still have to deal with Ukraine. And so Mike Johnson is sort of throwing a bone at the right wing of his party. We understand that, but ultimately this is going to land right about where it is right now. There may be a token cut just to make it look like he gave up, that he got something. But ultimately, this is really about just trying to play some sort of political games and cut a deal that will enable the government to move forward, the aid to move forward, and the IRS to move forward. And for all the talk about what's going on with funding the IRS and all this kind of stuff, it was just reported last week that IRS collections are up substantially in 2023 compared to 2022, which means that more people are having to pay their fair share of taxes, which benefits everybody, including Mike Johnson's constituents.
Yeah, they don't seem to care much about that. And why, Allen, are they so obsessed with the IRS, other than they don't want the IRS going after these big corporations that are not paying their taxes? Clearly, this isn't about the little guy. So what's the obsession over the IRS to begin with? I know the IRS for
I think it's the same obsession with everything. So it's not maybe the corporations in it more, but more specifically the billionaires, right? The difficult tax returns. Our former president couldn't have his taxes from 10 years ago because he's still working on filing them. He was going to pay $100. So the new regulations, as they will say many times, it's easier to go after a poor man with IRS taxes because he's got receipts than it is to go after a rich man with all the sort of write-offs and what have you. And so Biden changed that after Trump's rules to go after this category of people, and now they're coming back in trying to protect them. So once again, it's the protectionism that we've already seen with the buddy and with the Supreme Court, right? That we already see with the funding of individuals to run against Biden for the office, right? It's the same hands of money, that protection of that small group category of people trying to protect themselves politically. So that's what it is. I think it is a non-starter, and I hope that Biden does not give anything. I hope the new Democratic Party learns a way to toe the line exactly the same way that Republicans have toed the line. This was something that was agreed upon. It passed. It was a big deal for the Biden administration. He should not go back on it. There's a lot of bubbling around that Biden's too old and Biden's too this and Biden's too that, whatever. If they don't want to have statesmanship on their side, we shouldn't have it on ours. We got that. That was a major win. Give them nothing. Let them pound pavement, close the government down if that's what they want to do, and then blame them all the way through, because there was a handshake before. So let's carry through on the agreement.
What about Ukraine, though? This bill doesn't include any aid for Ukraine because, a lot of super, conservatives, those on the far right, don't want to fund Ukraine. But we know the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate, their bill is both funding for Ukraine and Israel. So how does Mike Johnson navigate that?
Right. So I don't think Mike Johnson's thinking about it all, actually, which is part of the problem that we're going to have politically by sanctioning Israel and the actions in Palestine, because it's him coming back against us. In other words, say, well, how's this different in those distinctions? So if it's always wrong, it's always wrong. We need to sort of have that sort of middle ground in it. So I think it's going to be very confusing and complex. But I will say this in the global world, the United States is not the only funder of that war. And some other countries may have to step up while we sort of work out our government funding situation, because we can't lose our democracy over that issue alone. So part of the global commitment is that we're all going to go in and step in and do these things. The United States has been policing the world for a very long time, and that might be some of the problems that we see. It might be time for us to do more of a unified collective thing through the UN or someone else to meet that need until we get our Congress together.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Mike Johnson navigates all of the various factions in his own party. But some good news today, Professor. Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis have worked out deals with the big auto manufacturers after about 6 weeks of striking. And they're saying this is the most generous deal that auto union workers have gotten ever. They asked for a 40% increase. People thought that was, absurd. And they ended up with a 25% pay increase, which is pretty major. Obviously not the 40% that I think and probably we think they deserved. But what does this tell us about the power that employees have? We've seen several strikes this year, and the writers' strike ended with a more generous contract than the writers could have ever expected. There have been some others where workers seem to be winning in these strike negotiations.
I think 2023 is going to go down in history as the most important year for union organizing and union behavior generally, perhaps since World War II. When you look at the victories that have been brought up and the chilling effect that that's had on some of the efforts on the other side to hold down worker pay and worker benefits and that sort of thing, it's a great time right now for union organizing. Now, having said that, it's been at such a diminished place over the course of the last 40 years in particular, that there's so much ground that needs to be recaptured. And so hopefully, from my perspective, this is the beginning of something new in terms of worker benefits and protections and such. But it's a big, big win, and there's no question about it. And we know it's a big win because the corporations aren't bragging about the deal they got.
No. And, in the case of Ford, they came to the union saying, look, we got to end this. So, they came waving the white flag. And now Joe Biden was on the right side of this. He went out and stood with those UAW workers, and some people criticized him. And here we are a couple of weeks later with a deal that's the best deal ever for unions. So I hope he gets a lot of credit for standing with the unions on this issue. The actors still not back to work. So although writers are writing new material, there's no one to act, in our favorite movies and shows. And actors are telling their union leaders as well, don't give in. We've learned to live off less. We have been dealing with not getting paid now for over 6 weeks. It's been a couple of months now. And they're also demanding that their union leaders hold firm. So we're going to see what happens with the actors who don't, the majority of them, Some of the rank and file actors are blaming the A-listers for wanting to cave in. So we'll see, if they can hold that together. But Allen, big week for Trump. The Trump children, grown children, are going to be testifying in the civil fraud case. And Judge Chutkan in New York said, yeah, you got to stop talking about me and my clerk and the, Jack Smith. Is Trump going to end up in jail because he does not seem capable? We know he probably is not capable of following any gag order. Now he's had 2 placed on him in 2 different cases.
Well, so 2 sides. He may end up in jail because he'll always have Secret Service around him, and that thing will be a little bit lighter than it was before. But what I will give credit to Attorney General is they're creating the jail that Trump really does not need, right? With his public persona going down in smoke and not having money is a worse prison than him sitting in a prison will ever be, when he will never be respected as being on the Forbes list or a serious business person and knowing that everything is smoke and mirrors. So this is the end of the Wizard of Oz, and we pull back the curtain, and now it's the big embarrassment of always, because he's not 6'3", 215 pounds like I am. He's none of those things. So now it's just this big unveiling of just who he really is.
And he's so mad about Ivanka. Ivanka's got dismissed out of that civil fraud case because of the statute of limitations.
Right.
But the Attorney General won a motion to compel her to come testify. What do you think that's going to be like? Her sitting there.
She doesn't remember. None of them remember. I plead the fifth. I don't remember. I plead the fifth. I don't remember. I don't remember. I plead the fifth. I was pouring concrete at a building. I wasn't paying attention to the contracts, right? So that's what they've said in the past. It's going to be embarrassing for them. It's going to be hard for them to toe the line. And so, if I were their attorney, I don't know if I'd want them on the stand and say anything, because if you just get them in the right motion, they're typical to go off and say something. And Ivanka, in this point, which I think is she's a bigger danger than Trump than anything else, because she has small kids. And that family name she's trying to sort of separate herself from over and over again since she left the White House. So this could be a changing moment for her. She basically disappeared.
Well, 43. Kim Kardashian gave her a little Hollywood cred by inviting her to some swanky birthday party here in LA, for which the internet went crazy and really trashed Kim Kardashian and Ivanka Trump. And keep in mind, Ivanka Trump also is on record. She testified before the House committee that was investigating January 6th. So they have some prior statements. And the best way to cross-examine a witness is to use those prior statements. So I'm going to be looking to see what the Attorney General does with her prior statements. So she won't be able to claim she doesn't remember anything because she's already gone on the record. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Allen. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you, Professor Fauntroy. Glad to hear things are kind of calm at George Mason University, because they've been blowing up at some of these private universities. So glad to hear something is.
Don't worry, it's only Monday. We got plenty. We got the rest of the week for things to blow up.
All right. Well, I will see you guys very soon when we come forward. Meet this woman who's taking on these school moms who want to ban books. Make sure you stick around. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4, only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
To boldly go where no man